Hey everybody, this is Ali Good's World War One introduction. Let's go along. The main goal for today is to understand the four main causes of World War One to better associate an understanding of why the war happened in the first place. The first cause that we see is militarism, which is defined by the glorification of military power. Now, when we think about militarism, we oftentimes think about simply having an army. What this really means is that each nation in Europe at this point in time maintained large standing armies at the ready in case of an attack or of an encroachment on territory. The result of this, and one of the reasons it is the main cause of the war, is simply because if you have an aggressive mode of attack and you have a large standing army, you're probably more inept to use it. So, therefore, a lot of the situations that were occurring in Europe at the time were handled by military force. The next cause that we see is the formation of alliances. Now, the definition of alliances is simply a treaty or an agreement to support if another country is attacked. In Europe at this point in time, we're going to see two formations occur that's going to be huge later on in the war. First, the Triple Alliance, which is made up of three countries: Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. The second alliance we see is what we call the Triple Entente, which is made up of Great Britain, France, and Russia. These alliances are going to lead to side choosing later on in the war, which is going to be very detrimental to an easing of tension. The third cause we see to World War One is the influence of imperialism among the nations. Now, the European nations at this point in time had been many years in the making of influencing and colonizing places in Africa and in Asia. This resulted in a competition to see who could colonize and who could gain the most land in these countries seen as somewhat inferior to the Europeans in their minds. Now, the result that we're going to see from this is increased tensions among European nations simply from imperialism. Another factor we like to see here is the concept of race and the superiority factor that the Europeans had when conquering and imperializing many of these nations in Africa, in Asia, and of course the Slavic nations that will be very instrumental later on. The fourth cause that we see is the rise of nationalism in the European countries. Now, by definition, the word nationalism means a deep devotion to one's country. This doesn't sound like a negative thing because it sounds very similar to patriotism, but it's very different. The result of this that we're going to see is that people with the same language and culture were beginning to unite and really advocate to establish their own countries. Now, again, this doesn't sound very negative, but if we look at the bottom point, this began to believing into the superiority of one race or culture or ethnicity, which is going to result in a lot of negative aspects leading into World War One, especially in World War II. Things such as the Holocaust, the Gulag, so on and so forth. As we go further in history, nationalism becomes a very dangerous game to play with. All four of these issues are going to come together and work in concert to create this powder keg in Europe. Now, the powder keg itself, and when we say that term, refers to the Balkans, which were made up of mostly Slavic people groups that were displaced through immigration and so on and so forth. Now, Serbia wanted to unite these groups in Bosnia. They wanted to basically rid themselves of these Slavic people groups, unite them together in Bosnia, and that be that. Now, that sounds like a great plan, but unfortunately, these were existing countries that did not want Slavic people groups, and they were going to force people from their homelands for ancestral years. Now, this will come to a culminating portion when Archduke Franz Ferdinand will be assassinated by a Serbian nationalist. He was, of course, the Austrian Archduke. When this occurred, this will set off a match that would never be able to take back. After the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, this will lead to our final result, which is, unfortunately, all-out war. Of course, we see all that war come into play when Austria declares war on Serbia, which we saw coming because of the assassination. But because of those alliances and militarism that we talked about earlier, Russia comes to the aid of Serbia. Now, because France is aligned with Russia, they come to the aid of course, Russia. On the flip side of the coin, Germany will end up supporting Austria-Hungary. Now, this is not the only countries that will be a part of World War One. Remember, this is just the introduction to it. So understand, this is simply a game that we see being played between Austria and Serbia. Unfortunately, because of the existing circumstances, we see this coming. So we see all four of these factors play in concert together to really bring us this fertile ground of war. Could there have been another way to avoid war? Quite possibly. Without the alliances, without militarism, who is to know? That's speculation, but unfortunately, this is the reality we are in. These causes provided this opportunity for war. As we see throughout this introduction, Serbia and Austria-Hungary were the main aggressors and really the ones that had the issues in the beginning. But unfortunately, because of our factors at hand, we will also see the other countries being involved. Remember, this is the introduction. Great Britain, United States, many other countries are going to be involved. As we continue throughout, I look forward to talking and to exploring more avenues of what actually goes on in World War One.